Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love the watches you see here, everything is for sale. We're starting our weekend off right with watches, an incredible collection, the likes of which you can purchase. Pricing and names and references in the description below, but reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for additional details. We are also always looking to build inventory. Trade us a watch, sell us a watch. We pay fast, we pay cash, we make the process easy. No upper limit on value paid. We will buy your entire collection of vintage Rolex, of De Bethune, FP Journe, or Greubel Forsey. To buy, trade, or sell, reach out to me personally, tmosso at thewatchbox.com. In 2020, Omega brought us something special, the resurrection of the stainless steel case around caliber 321. Caliber 321, a famed column wheel chronograph movement originating in the early 1940s, a collaboration between Omega and Lemania. The Lemania 2310 became the Omega 321, and on the pre-moon watches, it flew into space. It became a legend among space connoisseurs, memorabilia collectors, as well as vintage watch enthusiasts. For 2019, it returned, albeit in a platinum case. Well, 2020 brought us what we wanted. This watch right here, not just a caliber 321, but also a revival of the historic 105003 reference, better known as the Ed White, after the American astronaut who in 1965, during the Gemini program, took one of these watches, his personal watch, as a matter of fact, on a spacewalk, America's first. Now, the watch you see here is smaller than a moon watch. It's a pre-moon case. So we have squared off lug ends, no lyre style lugs. You can see there are no crown guards. And instead of being 42 millimeters in diameter, it's 39.7. Now, it is a sapphire sandwich front and back, but it's also got a lot of vintage details. As you can see, we've got the dot over 90 bezel, got a diagonal 70, vintage Omega logo, as well as Speedmaster and Omega marquee on the dial. More vintage Omega logos. You can see them all over the watch. A vintage style flat link bracelet, and as you could see, really simple case lines. Lyre style lugs would be a Speedmaster professional thing. You wouldn't find them on a 1053. Taking a quick look at the watch on the wrist, you can see it does wear more compact. Well, it's not a thin timepiece, it is narrow across the wrist due to the presence of pivoted rather than solid end links. An easy watch to wear. I could recommend it for a wrist as small as 13.5 centimeters circumference, so the pre-moon look is appropriate for him as well as for her. There is lume. We'll do a quick lume shot. Taking a look at this dial in the dark, you'll find that there's absolutely no shortage of lume. Though this is a Omega Speedmaster for which perhaps the lume is of secondary importance. I know you're wondering, and yes, the watch does feature a ceramic bezel insert around the back. This is what you're paying for with this model. The resurrection of caliber 321. Now, it's based on the Lemania 2310, which under a different name and a different state of finish became the Patek Philippe CH2770. It's done business in watches from Patek to Vacheron to Breguet, so it has aristocratic family links, but here you could see finished to an exceptional standard by Omega's column wheel workshop. It's a fascinating timepiece because it's a throwback. You can see the column wheel and the color contrast between the steel components of the chronograph mechanism and the rose gold coated brass components such as the chronograph bridge, the balance cock, and the bridges and the plates that sit below. We have the column wheel with lateral clutch and world-class column wheel feel and sound. Let's have a listen. It really does feel good. It sounds good. Manual wind. It's got a 55-hour power reserve and a beat rate of 18,000 vibrations per hour. It also turns on an overcoil hairspring. It helps to keep excellent time in any position. It is a gorgeous looking movement, and it is well worth the price of admission. Now, for this watch, there is a wait at Omega dealers. However, this one is available for immediate delivery. Now, taking a look at something very, very different. This is the original variant of the Patek Philippe Calatrava 5296 that launched back in 2005. This is the 5296G001, 38 millimeters in diameter in white gold. You can see that the watch has a lovely sector-style dial in opaline silver white. Now, as you move it through the light, you can see that the dial is not all one silver. There's actually two, a darker gray and a silver white. Dark blue printing for all of the sector features, as well as blue printing on the white date disc. We have lovely blued steel hands, leaf-style hands for the hours and minutes, and a counterweighted lancet-style seconds hand at center. The watch has a wonderful action, as you can see here. We're going to activate the hacking seconds function. And though some people wonder why Patek didn't feature hacking on its legacy movements. Everyone who knows the caliber 324 knows that you can easily hack just by applying a small amount of back pressure to the crown, just like that. It's very easy to do. Flip it all over. Caliber 324 on the reverse side. You can see this is one of the later examples with the Patek Philippe seal that would have been operative from mid-2009 onward. Unidirectional winding, ceramic rotor bearings. We have a 45-hour power reserve. We have a 6-position adjustment, a free-sprung Gyromax style balance, and an anti-magnetic silicone hairspring. And while the movement does include a blend of manual and mechanical finishing, what sets these Patek movements apart from something like Audemars Piguet, F. Journe, or Jaeger-LeCoultre is that the balance of hand finishing is actually much higher than what you'll find on those brands. Highlights include bevels that are started mechanically but finished using handheld buffing tools to create that mirrored shine. You can also see we have 1, 2, 3 different sizes of engine turning here. If you look, you can see the locating pegs. There's 3 of them here used to locate the balance cock on the base plate. Those have been black polished on their top, so the attention to detail here is superb, and the watch is razor thin. It's also equipped with a pin buckle, traditional dress watch fare. Throw it on the wrist, and being only 38 millimeters in diameter and quite slender, it wears easily. Again, another unisex option, easily sliding underneath a dress cuff, a lovely watch, and probably the best center-second Calatrava design of the 2000s. Jumping from one to another, we seem to be oscillating between straps and bracelets. Let's take a close look. Launched in 2018, this is the Blancpain 50 Fathoms Bathyscaphe Quantième Complète. So it is a complete calendar with a date, month, and moon face with a nostalgic and traditional man in the moon face. Ardoise metallic sunburst dial. You can see that it features white gold hands and applique indices. We'll do a quick loom shot right here. And you can see there is absolutely no shortage of lume on this watch. We also have a 120 click unidirectional rotating dive bezel. So you line up that luminescent pearl with the minute hand. Now you have a 0 to 60 count up timer. I often find these are more convenient than a chronograph. Give me a dive bezel any day of the week over a chronograph. Taking a quick look, this is a rare implementation of a bracelet on a modern day bathyscaphe. So this is not the X71 that you see on the 5015s. This is a bathyscaphe specific bracelet that's all of satin finish, features generous gaps between the links to avoid pinching skin or pulling hair. You can see that one of the design refinements used here is the use of hex screws. These might actually be torque screws that allow more torque to be applied to the screw without stripping off the head, which makes for more secure assembly, but also avoids disfiguring any part of the bracelet. Twin trigger release, you can see it's a non-sequential close, and we have a relatively simple case, as the bathyscaphe, since it surfaced in its modern form in 2013, has been the more vintage-inspired of the two main 50 Fathoms lines. So we have these squared-off lug ends, we have minimal beveling, sheer sides, a big crown, but no crown guards. We have a ceramic insert in the bezel, real nice micro knurling on the side that's easy to grip. And then on the back, we have a caliber that goes by 6654P, but it's actually a variant on the 1150 Frédéric Piguet. So twin barrels. This one has a 72-hour power reserve because it has a higher beat rate than a standard 1150, so 4 hertz rather than 3 hertz. Also, modern standards are respected here. We have a free-sprung balance adjusted in 6 positions with a recessed bolt aerodynamic balance and a silicone anti-magnetic hairspring. The movement is finished in contemporary form. As you can see, there's a spiral graining, a spiral brushed pattern or snailing out over the bridges, though we still have very traditional mirrored anglage and a triple finished rotor with media blasting, satination, and beveling on the edge. And of course, it is very anti-magnetic because of the presence of the silicone hairspring. It's a large watch, make no mistake. Thrown it on my wrist, you could see approximately 50 millimeters from lug to lug. It does make itself seen. So I would say your wrist should be my size or larger to wear this, so 16 centimeters circumference or larger. But very comfortable and thinner than a 5015 at just over 13 millimeters. It's about 13.4 millimeters thick, so it's a surprisingly cuffable timepiece in spite of its bulk. Now let's take a look at a watch that is much more easily cuffed. Here is a Rolex Date 40 This is the 228206 in platinum, and you know that because it features the platinum exclusive Glacier Blue dial. Glacier Blue, Ice Blue, a couple of different names for this. It's been getting more intense over time, as the original versions of this blue were so faint you could often miss the color in certain lights. Now it's unmistakable. We have a fire blued seconds hand. We have applied white gold, faceted, radially arrayed Roman numerals, including a watchmaker's 4. You can see that this is a 40, so the Cyclops eye doesn't quite monopolize the dial the way it does on smaller day-dates. Inside, the latest caliber 3255, chronometer certified, anti-magnetic, shock-resistant, automatic winding, and a 70-hour power reserve with a double quick-set function. So in addition to hacking seconds, you have the ability to set the date as well as the day. And so you could set the date as well as the day if you correctly select the crown position, and that's how that works. It's a double quick set in Rolex parlance. Now, another nice thing is that every version of the Date 840 features ceramic-coated pins inside of the bracelet, and those ceramic-coated pins will not be thinned out by contact with the platinum. As a result, over time, the bracelet will not stretch. Bracelets have never stretched at Rolex. It's always been the pins binding the links that have aged and caused a reduction in the tolerances. So this is designed to hold off bracelet stretch for life, not just the life of the owner, but the life of the watch. Super easy to fit underneath the cuff, and surprisingly durable, as it is shock resistant, highly anti-magnetic, and 100 meters water resistant. So you can take this lovely platinum blue beauty swimming. Just about anything except professional diving is okay. Right here, we've got the Gerard Perego Laureato Absolute TI 230. Reason: in 2021, we celebrated 230 years since the creation of the first company that would later form the combined Gerard Perego, but we also celebrated 230 years since the discovery of titanium in the future Great Britain. So this is a watch that celebrates 230 years of Gerard Perego as well as titanium, and it is made of grade 5 titanium, the Laureato Absolute TI 230, media blasted with a few polished highlights, so you can tell this is grade 5 titanium, which is the good stuff. It's hypoallergenic and light like grade 2, but unlike grade 2, it's also able to take a polish, and it's hard to scratch, being harder than most steels. The dial is a gradient fade. 230 of these were made. They also made 230 with the gradient fade blue dial, and so light at the center but darker at the edge. You can see that the counterweight to the seconds hand as well as the hour and the minute hand, actually one half of a Gerard Perego golden bridge. The Laureato bezel shape, which you can see recapped on the cap of the crown, is the other Gerard Perego design icon, and the Laureato was one of the original integrated bracelet steel sports watches back in the mid-70s in 1975. So this modern day take, which is to the Laureato what the offshore is to the Royal Oak, this is not derivative of modern watches. This is very much in the tradition of the Laureato, dating back to the mid-70s. It's remarkably water resistant, and I have to cheer Gerard Perego for at least making an attempt to convert meters to feet, as 300 meters is a lot closer to 985 feet than it is to the 1,000 feet that most, including Rolex, will put on their dials. We also have on the back a little notation that this is a limited edition. We've got the A for absolute, and then it's surprisingly thin at under 15 millimeters. That surprised me. The watch itself is 44 millimeters, but it doesn't wear that large. And you can see that it features a sandwich-style dial with a stencil on top of a mirrored base that creates wonderful depth effects. The strap is a confusing one. Although FKP rubber, externally, it's said to be infused with titanium. I don't know what that means from a practical standpoint, although I can see a little bit of a metallic twinkle in the rubber itself, so maybe that's the advantage. We have a clasp that matches the watch, grade 5 tie, media blasted and polished, and then internally you can see there's a clever feature that GP has added where you have this little trigger and you push that in, and then once you push it in, you can move this little adjustable fine adjustment mechanism. See how it has a little rack and a lock? So you can fine-tune the fit when it is on your wrist in case you're in between perforations on the strap. We'll throw it on my wrist. which is 16 centimeters in circumference. You can see it wears well, lower than you'd expect, and although it's 53.3 millimeters from lug to lug, the shape of the case, which has angled lugs, helps to mitigate against that. Really comfortable, wonderfully light, durable, and again, you can wear it even on a small wrist like mine. I couldn't get anywhere near a 44 millimeter Royal Oak offshore. This wears more like a 42, and I would encourage you to think of this as more of a 42 than its rated 44. Now here's a watch that does wear like a 44. Back in 2021, Breitling threw out an olive branch to its old guard, the collectors who actually liked the really big, boisterous, bold, and brash watches of the late Schneider family era. Well, Breitling decided to keep those folks in the Breitling family with the Super Chronomat collection, of which this is one, and the flagship. In a combination of ceramic, rose gold, and steel, 44 millimeters in diameter, this is the Super Chronomat 44 chronograph 4-year calendar. So 4-year calendar, what Breitling used to call the 1461, it's a semi-perpetual. If a simple calendar, a complete calendar like this, needs to be corrected 5 times a year, and an annual calendar once a year, well, this only needs to be corrected once every 4 years after February 29th. So every 1,461 days, a calendar correction. Now it's got a vertical clutch chronograph module with the 1461 calendar on top. You can see the module is slightly above the base caliber, as the pushers of the chronograph are not exactly on the same center line as the crown, but that's okay because the watch still remains fairly thin, at about 15 millimeters thick. It's 100 meters water resistant, chronometer certified. The base is an ETA 2892A2 in chronometer spec, and you can see the bezel is large, and despite the calendar function of the watch and perhaps the aeronautical associations of the Chronomat line, this is technically a diving chronograph. We have a 120-click unidirectional rotating bezel with a luminescent pearl. We've got the rider tabs to make it easier to grip. We've got screws fixing the bezel to the case because this is a captive bezel, so you can't accidentally knock the bezel off by accident. Now, it is fairly well loomed in the dark. You're going to find there's no shortage. 4 corners of the bezel are luminescent, which means you can more easily read the passage of time relative to the index in the dark. And then the watch features a full deployment clasp and a strap that's designed to resemble the Chronomat's signature rouleau bracelet. Let's take a quick look at this on my wrist. It is a large watch, make no mistake, well over 50 millimeters from lug to lug, but not so big that I couldn't wear it. That said, I wouldn't wear it on a wrist smaller than mine, but 16 centimeters circumference and up, I think you're going to find no trouble wearing the Super Chronomat chronograph 4-year calendar. A really cool piece and a great way to get into complicated watchmaking. It's automatic, it's swimmable, it's loomed, it's a chronometer, it's a chronograph, it's a moon phase, it's a nearly perpetual calendar. It's all of those things, and it's very approachable. Here's something that's less approachable, although perhaps ironically also quite well loomed. This is the Patek Philippe 5204P split seconds perpetual calendar. So it is a perpetual calendar split seconds chronograph, and this is the 5204P011. The 5204 was the successor to the landmark 5004. This came out in 2012, but the black dial variant in platinum you see here came out in 2014, 2 years later. Now it's 40 millimeters in diameter. You can see that it has a little top Vesselton diamond between the lugs to remind you this is a platinum Patek Philippe. It has wonderful seams between the lugs and the case. This is true welded lug construction. This is how you build up a case when time and money are no object. And basically, you create the case, you create the lug, you insert the lug into a slot in the case, you weld them together with heat, and then you remove all evidence of the welded joint to create a super sharp break. And Patek is making its own cases, so this is a sign of just how accomplished their case making has become. A little fluting on the flank of the lug, and then a concave bezel profile. We have a coaxial split-second chronograph pusher inside of the crown. And of course, a split-second chronograph, great for judging the gap between 2 concurrent timed events, such as runners around a track or race cars around a course. You have the ability to split the seconds and find out whether the gap is waxing or waning, but it's more, it's a perpetual calendar. So as with a true perpetual calendar here, you don't have to touch it for leap years or irregular length months. If that Breitling needed one correction every 4 years, this doesn't need to be touched until the year 2100. Flip it all over. You can see one of the most appealing features of a split seconds chronograph is that these have wonderful depth. You can see that the split seconds bridge, the little clasps or pincers, the secondary column wheel, and the forest of springs, remarkably intricate, beautifully finished, proving that Lange does not have a monopoly on mainstream high luxury finish. This is as gorgeous as anything hailing from Glasuta. You can also see we have a black polished and capped column wheel. Right next to it, a steel chronograph clutch, fully jeweled. You can see that there are sharp outward angles where bevels come to a point on the clutch, and several of them on the clutch alone. This finish is world class, and you may wonder, and I will confirm, yes, the watch has hacking seconds. It also has a manual wind 65-hour power reserve. It's 6-position adjusted. It features a hand-curved overcoil hairspring, a Jawor-Max free-sprung balance, and lots and lots and lots of special equipment related to the chronograph. You can see that there's a little pawl and pawl wheel. That's the instantaneous minute jumper right there. And then the watch includes a matching full platinum clasp. We'll throw this on my wrist. Split seconds chronograph, perpetual calendar in platinum with a black dial. This is getting close to as good as it gets. You can actually wear this watch on a wrist as small as 13.5 centimeters circumference. The lugs are short across the wrist. It comes nowhere near the edge of my wrist. And you can even see that with the concave bezel profile, it will fit decently underneath the dress cuff. You'll have no problem there. And being all platinum, it has a gratifying mass to it. Now here we have something that debuted in 2010 as a 10-year anniversary present to Debitoon collectors. 10 years of the DB28, this is the DB28 XP. The original 28 became a landmark model for the brand, not just its design icon, but the first Debitoon to win the Aiguille d'Or, or Best Picture at the Oscars of Watchmaking back in 2011. If the GPHG is the Academy Awards of Watchmaking, then the Aiguille d'Or, or the Golden Hand, the Golden Needle, is like getting Best Picture, the best overall efforts. This was the best overall watch in the world for 2011. Now, of course, it came out in the 2010 model years. This was a 10-year anniversary in 2020. It's very thin, only 8.6 millimeters thick in grade 5 titanium, variable geometry, spring-loaded floating lugs, going from about 54.5 millimeters to about 50.5 millimeters. You could see the microlight engraving of the case, and that is not stamped or turned on a drill bit. That is done with a graving tool. This is just like guilloche, but instead of having something that feels hackneyed and antiquated, Denis Flageolet, the watchmaker and leader of Debitoon, decided he wanted a sort of micro striation that would be a modern take on guilloche. And so he features it on this cap above the base plate, as well as waxing and waning in thickness on the case itself. The dial features an immense amount of diamond pasted black polish. We have a mirror underneath a proprietary titanium and white gold balance. Here's what's proprietary here. The case, made by Debitoon. The dial, the movement, both made in-house by Debitoon. The triple shock protection system, patented. The twin self-adjusting barrels that cannot be accidentally overwound, patented. The hairspring profile, patented. That bimetallic balance, patented. The process for bluing titanium, patented. And the watch has a manual wind 6-day power reserve. Courtesy of the 1, 2, 3 shock protection springs, it's also surprisingly durable for an ultra-thin watch, 43 millimeters in diameter. It doesn't wear that large. It wears feather light, and you may be surprised to know this is a factory strap right here. We wanted to give the watch a little bit of color to pop, and you can see it does exactly that. The level of mirror finish on this watch is second to none. Not even Grubel Forsey and Ferdinand Berthoud give you this level of diamond polished finish, and it is truly something else. On my wrist, 16 centimeters, it wears just fine, slides under a cuff, and of course, variable geometry means it will adjust to you rather than forcing you to adjust to it. You can also appreciate that the bridge for the balance itself has been entirely black polished across its top, mirror beveled on its side, and if you look carefully, you can see no fewer than 1, 2, 3, 4 sharp interior angles where bevels come to a cleft crease, and that's just on the bridge. There's also solarization on the barrels, black polished globes of titanium for the hours, as good as it gets from a brand that has made only about 3,000 watches since it was inaugurated back in 2002. But I'm finishing up with a legacy brand today because I adore this watch. This is the Patek Philippe 5236P inline perpetual calendar. This watch is based on a number of historic watches Patek Philippe has created, pocket watches like the 725, the 699, the 843, and the 844 that featured this inline style American calendar with the day, the date, and the month. This model bowed in 2021. In a lot of ways, this is the big brother of the 5235G regulator. You have the same historically inspired 3448 case. You have the same highly conical bezel profile and angular lugs. You have the same vertical satination on the dial. You even have the same caliber 31260 on the reverse side. But what really sets this apart is that it's a perpetual. So the 5235G regulator is a perpetual only in the sense that you have to adjust it once a year rather than 5 times a year, but that's an annual calendar. This is a true perpetual, so no touching it until the year 2100. Getting a little bit closer, you can see that it also has conventional center hands. So the regulator is a beautiful watch, but it can be a little bit difficult to read because you have the hours, minutes, and seconds on separate scales, and the scales for seconds and hours are very small on the regulator. Here we also have a fumé fade dial. You could see it features a blue, but it's lighter at the center and darker at the edge. It does have the same top to bottom satin brushed grain as the 5235. Now when you turn it over, you can see we have the 260, or I should say 31260. Only it's different, and it's different in 2 big ways. Well, 3. The first is that Patek went with a conventional escapement rather than the somewhat temperamental advanced research silicon system. So here we have a metal anchor, a metal escape wheel, and conventional pallet stones. We also have a higher beat rate for potentially greater accuracy, going from the old watch's quirky 23,040 vibrations per hour to a more conventional and, again, potentially more accurate 28,800 vibrations per hour. The mainspring also puts out 20% more torque to turn a more power-intensive complication. And then the rotor is changed from 22 karat gold to platinum for greater winding efficiency. This movement is also properly sized for the case, as it is 34 millimeters in diameter. It has over 500 parts. It has a lovely architecture. In addition to the finishing, which is self-evident, you can see it's good. The architecture is handsome. We have the rotor opposite the barrel, and then from the barrel all the way down to the escapement, we have this lovely finger-style train, just like an old Geneva pocket watch, and it's a beautiful thing to see. And it is unerringly accurate, not just as a perpetual calendar, but guaranteed to run no worse than -3 + 2 seconds a day from the factory. And we have this wonderful patented system, 3 patents going into this watch, one of which is for the 2 sets of coplanar discs. So we have the day, and we have 1 digit of the date, and then we have the month and the other digit of the date, and they are shoulder to shoulder. So you wind up with an inline perpetual calendar and a double-digit grand date. Okay, if you love this watch, which is my favorite modern-day Patek Philippe, and you think you might want to make it yours, reach out to me, Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.